Hi, Cheryl.
What do you want me to say? I'm your introduction.
Are you? Oh, good. Okay. Great.
Anything special?
Can just tell my name and that I'm the older adult services and young adult services at the Albany County Public Library. I know. Do you want to use the mic?
I heard 32 of us. We did it last year.
Older adults and libraries. Yep. Yeah, and there's my job titles too. I was afraid nobody would show up because there's so many other things going on. Do you want to go ahead and start? Yeah. Giving people enough time.
Can I have your attention, please? Good morning.
Good morning.
We're going to get started here. This is Ruth Hitchcock. She is the older adults and young adults services librarian at the Albany County Library. And she's going to speak to you this morning on older adults and libraries, collection development and programming. Ruth Hitchcock.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for coming. If you have any trouble hearing me, please let me know because this mic doesn't work the best with the outfit I wore today. I'd like to welcome you all and thank you very much for coming. I think that this is a really important topic and I'm glad to see a full room. And I want to welcome everybody who's watching and listening online with us today as well. As Cheryl said, my name's Ruth Hitchcock and I work in Laramie, Wyoming at the Albany County Public Library. And I've worked there for about 2 years. I'm an Iowa girl, and I got my MLS at the University of Iowa a few years ago. What I do for my 2 jobs, first of all, I'm the older adult services librarian. And for this position, I do all of our large print collection development. I deliver books to homebound patrons, and I also make weekly and monthly visits to several different senior living centers, senior activity centers in our community. My other hat is the young adult librarian, so I work with both ends of the spectrum. And for that position, I do young adult programming like book discussions and a teen summer reading program, and I also do the young adult collection development. Before we get started, does everyone have a white packet? There's more available on the back table. And the packet is available online also through the MPLA and WLA websites. I just want to start out by summarizing what we're going to cover today. First of all, we're going to talk about the growing older adult population in the United States. Then we'll move on to talking about collection development and programming for older adults. I have some tips for making these things happen in your libraries. And then we'll have some time at the end for questions and answers, and you can come up and look at some of the products I brought to show you today. And I also wanted to mention that almost everything that I'll say today is in your packet, so you shouldn't have to write down every word that I say. And I also have references for the books that I'm going to share with you today in your packet. So let's start out. Turn to page 2 and 3 in your packet. And I've pulled together a lot of facts about older adults that I've read in different publications over the past few years. I just want to give you a minute to look at these facts. And as you're reading, think about which one surprises you the most. And we'll talk about them in a minute. I'm seeing some eyes looking up at me, so let's continue. Somebody share something that surprised you that you just read. Yes?
I'm surprised that so many are overweight and obese.
Did everyone hear that? She's surprised that there's a lot of overweight and obese older adults. Yes?
I have a question. People aged 65 and over spend the most time reading of any age group. Is that a stable statistic? Or, are people coming into that group also spending more time reading? Or is that group dying off because younger people moving up aren't reading so much?
I'm not 100% sure of the answer to your question, but I would say that from my own experience. I would believe that over time that has probably been true, or at least in recent years. Anyone else have a question or a comment about one of these facts?
I was surprised by in 25 years, Wyoming would have the second highest elderly population.
Yeah, that's really shocking, isn't it? And you know, it's a prediction, so it may not happen, but if it does happen, we better be ready for it. Yeah.
I'm from North Dakota, and we just did a survey because by the year 2010, 25% of our population in our community is going to be 55 and older.
Yeah.
And one of the comments that I also serve a lot of older adults is this is a time now when they finally have the time to read.
Right.
Their children are pretty much gone, their careers are established, and some of them are even early retired.
Exactly. Anyone else that want to comment on something? Okay. Well, I feel very strongly that this is a really important issue for librarians, and I don't think it gets very much attention right now. I feel like this group is often overlooked by librarians. We spend millions of dollars every year on children's programming and materials, but we usually do nothing specifically for older adults. Very few libraries have staff hours designated to serve older adults. And as you mentioned, that fact that seniors are the group of people who read more than anyone else, it's really important that we have the materials that they want to read. Yes, Martha?
And they vote.
Yes, and they vote. Exactly. Exactly.
Pay taxes.
Yes. So I'd like to move on and talk about the collections for older adults. And especially if you're a public librarian, it's really important to focus on collections for older adults. How many of you are public librarians? Okay. Do we have any academic librarians? All right. Any other kind of librarians? Special librarians? Okay, great. Well, I'd like to start out by talking about topics of interest to older adults. These are things that you need to have in your collection and that are specific to older adults usually. Topics like retirement planning, writing wills, grandparents raising grandchildren, special cookbooks for people with restricted diets, information about prescription drugs. And then there's also things that seniors tend to be more interested in, for example, hobbies like quilting or golfing. And when I get a reference question from an older adult about a certain topic, I kind of view that as an opportunity to evaluate that little part of my collection about investments, for example, or living wills to see if I have current information about that topic. And I know that some of you may be from very small libraries and you really may have limited resources, but with the internet and databases, we do have access to a lot of this information, even if we can't spend hundreds of dollars on books on a certain topic. One thing I've observed, which you all probably have too, is seniors have as wide of reading interests as any other age group. But there are these certain topics that are important to them, and in my experiences bringing books to homebound patrons, I've certainly noticed some trends among my Laramie readers, subjects that they enjoy reading. Some of the things they like are art, music, poetry, biographies. Local history is very popular. Local authors just get eaten up. I can't keep them on the shelves. In terms of fiction, cozy mysteries are really popular. Christian fiction, westerns, and romances. Let's move on now to talking about large print. How many of you work in libraries that offer large print collections? That's great. How many of you purchase large print? Okay. You'll probably have some tips to add to my talk. I've been buying large print for the past 2 years at our library. I'd like to start out by mentioning that large print can benefit a lot of patrons in your library, not just the typical older adult who has vision problems. Some of the groups that can benefit from large print The first would be reluctant readers. I buy all of the Harry Potter books in large print. And if you're a child or an adult struggling to read, it can really help if you can read several pages of large print in a minute, where it might take you 5 minutes to read 1 page of regular print. And it's also a lot easier to follow along on a line and not lose your place when you're reading a large print book. A second group that can benefit from large print is people who exercise in a gym and ride an exercise bike or a treadmill. I do this, and if I'm trying to read, a 10-point font in a Runner's World magazine, it's pretty hard to follow along, but I can bounce around and still read my 16-point font large print novel. A third group that can benefit from large print is cooks. I brought along Julia Child's Kitchen Wisdom cookbook, and we all have cooked and tried to follow a little recipe. This makes it a lot easier to be running around your kitchen and just look over your shoulder to see how many cups of flour you need. And then a final group that should really try to utilize large print is book discussion groups. If you have a group of 10 people in a book discussion, it's likely that at least one of them might have some vision problems. So I encourage people who select titles for discussion groups to pick a title that is available in large print, because anymore now there's probably 1,500 to 2,000 books published a year in large print, and most popular titles are available. So I'm going to kind of give you a crash course in large print in a nutshell. There's several different large print publishers, and most of them have their books available through vendors like Ingram and Baker and Taylor. Sometimes you can get discounts going through vendors, but I have found that you get the best discounts buying directly from the publishers. I'm on the mailing list for several companies, and they'll often send out discount flyers where you can get books for 50% off or even cheaper. I've gotten some fabulous large print books for $2 or $3 from some of these publications. And as a lot of you probably know, a brand new large print book usually costs $30. But as a librarian, most of the large print companies will give you a 15 to 20% discount automatically, but not always. Another way to save some money on large print books, now you have to have a larger budget to do this, but sign up for a standing order plan. All of the companies offer them. I'm fortunate to have a nice large print budget, and I have 3 standing order plans. And you save money by doing this because you get free shipping and handling usually. You also get a discount on the books, and it saves you time. Most of us don't have hours to flip through catalogs at work, and it's nice to know that every month there will be 2 Westerns coming in or whatever, in case you don't have time to work on collection development during that month. And I also think standing order plans are good because a book might come in that I may not normally consider ordering, so it adds some diversity to my collection. Has anybody ever ordered books from a large print book club? I highly discourage you from doing this. I did it early in my collection development years to try to save money, and I found that the less expensive books published by the mail order large print companies aren't as good of quality, and the companies were very difficult to work with. I received several regular print copies of titles doing this. You really do get a better product when you spend more money on a large print book. This is a Thorndike copy of Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince. And can anybody tell, does this look smaller than the Scholastic version? It's actually about the same size or smaller, I believe, than the Scholastic copy that most people purchase for their libraries. And that's because the paper is really thin. And I also think that the higher quality paper that publishers such as Thorndike use, it doesn't yellow as quickly as some of the less expensive large print books. Usually a book will come out in hard print first, or hardback, excuse me, And then if it's a good seller, some of the companies will come out with it in paperback. A few months later, they usually knock about $10 off the price. You may have noticed large print books that are real long being divided into 2 volumes. Both the volume option and the paperback option are great for patrons who have trouble holding a book. I run across that a lot, especially with my homebound patrons. I have some people who just cannot hold a book and all they can read is a thin magazine. So it's nice to have a mix of paperback and hardback books for people who have different preferences. Another great way to have some large print in your library, if you can't afford a large book collection, is to simply have a subscription to Reader's Digest in large print. For a small library, if you at least have a handful of large print books and this magazine, people will be aware that you have large print or that it's available out there for them. On pages 4 and 5, I've listed some of my favorite large print companies and some information about what each company's specialties are. How many of you are from Wyoming? Okay. I'm going to talk about some Wyoming things, but I think other states have some similar programs. One great thing we have in Wyoming is the state library's large print rotating collections. Every month at my library, I get a shipment of 7 boxes of large print books. There's about 175 titles in the collection that comes to me. And there's a wide variety of fiction and nonfiction in the collection. So when this arrives, I package up the old collection and get out all the new books on the shelves, and then I send the old collection on to the next library in the rotation. And this is a really neat way to get a fresh supply of large print books in every 4 months. And it would be a really great option for a smaller library who just can't afford large print. And if you're interested in participating in this program or want to ask some questions about it, Jan Batson is the woman to talk to at the state library. And her contact information is listed in the packet. Another great format for older adults is audiobooks. Often with a homebound patron who has been reading large print, who is starting to have trouble reading even the large print, I ask them if they'd like to try an audiobook. And often they're really hesitant to do this. But I usually try to offer to help them purchase a CD or tape player and then help them learn how to use it. Lots of players have such tiny buttons that even I can't figure them out sometimes without a little help from my husband. So I often will draw a picture, an enlarged picture of the buttons, or use colored stickers on the machine to help them know what buttons to push. There's also special tape players and cassette players made for people with vision problems that have extra large buttons or colored buttons to make this easier. I think audiobooks are a really great programming tool. I know an activity director at a senior living facility that always has a fresh supply of audiobooks from her public library, and the people who live there can just stop in the activity room and listen to them whenever they want. You could also have a kind of like a story hour where you play a book on tape every week as a real easy programming thing. Another thing I like to do with audiobooks is partner them with a large print or regular print book for a speaker who is learning English or learning to read. Then they can listen to the book while they read along. I know that some people can't afford having a lot of audiobooks and large print books in their libraries, and another great option is interlibrary loan. Although it's a bit expensive, it's a really good way to expand your offerings to your patrons who need these resources. One thing that I have done is I have several homebound patrons who have internet at home, and I've trained them to use Wildcat, which is our statewide library catalog, and they can place their own interlibrary loans and holds from the comfort of their home, and all I have to do is deliver the things to them. They get exactly what they want. Does anybody have any questions before we move on? Yeah.
You keep mentioning that you do all this. Do you physically take these books to the home now, and you go to the facilities, and you do all the large print rotation, you do all the ordering, and you do young adults?
Yes.
Laramie's a pretty big library.
Yeah, it's not that big, but our county isn't funded very well, so we really stretch every minute we have. I actually only have 15 hours a week to be the older adult services librarian. I have 12 hours a week to be the young adult librarian, and the remainder I work at the reference desk. Yeah. Yes?
I have a lot of trouble with large print for my Hispanics, and I'm from the southern part of New Mexico.
Okay.
And about all I can find in large print in Spanish is translations of American novels.
Yeah.
Very little in nonfiction, and practically nothing in other kinds of fiction.
Okay. Have you looked at Thorndike's offerings?
Yeah, but you look at the percentage in terms of, and I buy practically all of it.
Yeah.
It seems like it's so little. I wonder if you know any other.
Well, I don't buy very many Spanish books in large print. Does anybody else have any information to answer this question?
The only thing I can tell you is I attended a luncheon at WLA a few years ago, and Gail Thorndike is very aware of the problem of not presenting enough in the Spanish language, and not just taking American titles that are popular here and republishing them in the classics, but to really focus on the things that are Hispanic, so the Spanish-speaking people would have used them or appreciated in their culture. So they're moving in that direction, I imagine. I contact them about it.
Yeah, that's what I was going to tell you to do, write them a letter. I've contacted the publishers before to tell them titles that I think they should have available. Did you have a comment, ma'am?
We had problems locating large print science fiction, and we're a fairly small library, but we have had many older cases coming in on science fiction, and we just don't see it in anything. And I've gone through Thorndike and gone through probably all of these they have here, and
Yeah, again, I think we just have to speak up as librarians and say that we want science fiction and tell them we'll buy it if they make it. Yeah, there is very little science fiction in large print, I agree. Yes? There aren't any? They're on the back table, I think. Are there any?
They're all gone.
Oh my, I made 55. I thought that would be enough. I can give you mine when we're done. All right. Okay. And they're all online too, so you can print them off also. Yeah.
Question.
Yes.
You said that you had a rotating collection from the state library.
Yeah.
You check those out then to your homebound patrons?
I sure do.
And what kind of system do you use?
When I check out, I use the same system. We use Cersei Workflows as our circulation system, and I have changed some things from how my predecessor did things. They used to keep paper records of what books people had, and they'd check all the books out on one library card, and it was a disaster. So I have set each patron up with their own library card account. Our library doesn't charge fines, so that's one thing that kind of relieves patrons because they're often worried about getting overdue notices and fines. I also check the books out for 2 months and 1 day so that they can keep the book for an additional month if they want without worrying about it being overdue.
But I mean, those books are not in your catalog. Do you do something?
Oh, they are in the catalog, actually. The state library is really great about taking care of all that stuff, so I don't have to do anything.
So they
I
are
just,
actually in your
yeah, I just put them on the shelf. Yep. Yeah.
How often will you visit homebound patrons?
I visit the homebound patrons once per month. And then some of the other places, I go to our senior center twice per month. And then the other senior living centers where I do two main types of book distribution. There's when I will find out what Martha likes to read, and I'll know how many books she wants, what she prefers, doesn't like. I'll bring her X books per month. And then at our senior center and our nursing home, for example, I bring my laptop and a scanner and several big canvas bags full of large print books. And I'll just make a big display of the books and the patrons can come up and browse and pick what they want, and I can check it out on my laptop. It took a little while to work the kinks out for that system, but it's great to be able to use our circulation system with a wireless internet connection. And most of you probably have some type of standalone checkout system for emergencies, and I use that system when I go to facilities without a wireless internet connection. Any other questions?
How many patrons do you have?
I think I have about 30 or 40 right now. Yes?
I do home deliveries too, and I do a rotation about every 3 weeks, and I have a ferocious readers. I have to take out 12 to 15 titles at a time and try to give them a little options to decline, but I pre-check them out to them and then just recheck the ones they don't want back in. But my other question is, when you got to shipping things back and forth, what's the cost in the state library and Sarkat?
Actually, the Postal Service will ship things for the blind and physically handicapped for free. So when I mail these things, I have a pre-printed address label, so I don't have to write out 10 address labels. And across the top is typed free shipping for the blind and physically handicapped. So that's an important thing to know. I'm glad you asked that. All right. Well, okay.
We don't visit our homeland patrons. We either deliver the books to mobile mills who then take them, or like a relative or a friend will take them out.
Yeah.
But an option then with that U.S. Post Office scenario would be that you could just mail them. Is that your understanding?
I'm not sure about that. Yeah.
We get those black boxes, and we just, if we have anybody in town and, neighboring places, we can just mail them, put the card on it, then they can flip it over, mail it back, it does not cost them.
Great. Great.
Have to be registered already as blind or?
No.
Okay. Yeah.
But they do have to be able to get package delivery where they live.
Sure. Yeah.
If they have to go to the post office to get package, it's like,
Yeah, you sometimes have to be creative about getting books to people. All right, well, let's move on to talking about programming. One more question?
We actually have some people who do Meals for Wheels, some Meals for Wheels drop off those books and bring them back to us.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
It goes so well.
Partnering Meals on Wheels with book delivery. My best volunteer ever was a Meals on Wheels delivery gal, and she actually shelved for me. Shelved all the large print books. So, all right, well, let's get going. We don't have too much time left, and we've got a lot left to cover. So, older adult programming. As I said earlier, I don't have a lot of hours in a week to serve older adults, so I haven't done a lot of programming. I'd really like to do more if it's ever an opportunity. But I think one great thing about older adult programming is it's a great opportunity to bring together different generations of people. For a lot of older adult programs, you can create an opportunity for older adults to share their memories with younger generations. I've made a list of some really simple programming ideas that you can try at your library. You can do a book talk of the latest bestseller or a book of interest to seniors, like a book about writing wills, for example. You can have an informal coffee hour at your library every week where seniors are invited to come talk about what they're reading. You could organize a book discussion group that you either host at your library, or maybe you simply provide an activity director at a nursing home with books so she or he could lead their own discussion. Asking local youth to help out is a great idea. They can read to seniors who can't read for themselves anymore, or they can share their musical or theatrical talents with them. One thing that I've participated in was an art show at a nursing home. And the activity director asked the residents if they had any artwork that they had done, if they would like to share it. And I'm a quilter, and so she asked me to bring my quilts. And so I brought them, and we had a little art show there in their activity room. and they really like to talk to the artists and ask you questions about what you've done. And this would be a great opportunity also to have a little display of books related to art or quilting or sewing. I have a lot of resources here that I want to share with you that will help you plan programs. The first company is called the Attainment Company for People with Special Needs. And this company makes different products like games, books, flashcards for people with different types of special needs. Most of their products help people to keep their minds sharp, to be able to function at home or at work. So they have some really great products, and they make a pamphlet specifically with products for older adults. Next is Bifocal. Is anybody familiar with Bifocal? Okay. Bifocal makes programming kits for senior activities, and they're all focused on a broad theme that almost everyone can relate to. And the owners of the company generously sent us a activity kit for me to show you today, and you can come up and look at it afterwards too. But their kits typically include a video, and this kit is called Remembering the Fashion, the Agony and Ecstasy. So it's got a video and a tray of slides. I think they're updating some of their technology, so they're using some more DVDs and CDs. They warn people to buy a slide projector now, though, while you can, if you want to show slides. They include 25 activity booklets that are in large print, and these booklets mainly contain songs in large print for singing along to, and some other activities, poems, that type of thing. There's a sing-along tape for those of us who may not be so musically inclined. They include things to smell, things to touch. In this kit, there's some paper dolls. There's a mask-making activity. There's also some large print scripts for some skits to do. And then most importantly, there's a program manual for the person in charge. And it gives you ideas on how to use the kit, whether you want to do an hour-long program or a series of programs. And all the materials come in a bag. Now, the unfortunate thing about these kits is they're kind of expensive. They're $300 a piece. But they do sell mini kits that are less expensive, and parts of kits. In their catalog, they had a few things as cheap as $10. And all their products are available to browse online, too. And I do have a few of their catalogs if anybody wants one of those afterwards. Yes?
I just wanted to comment that even though it seems like an outdated technology, slides work really well because you can stop on one image and talk about it for as long as you want to talk about it.
Yeah.
A video is going to go by, and the only way to stop it is to pause it, and it's not as easy to just stop on one frame. And it really, the format of slides really works.
Yeah, that's a good comment.
And even though they are expensive, I don't know if your state has it, but we have quite a collection in North Dakota, and we do in our library loan them with people in our state. And so what I've tried to do is, even when people across the river in Minnesota, we've tried to make sure that they don't have the same one.
That's great, and it's going to relate to something I want to bring up at the end if we have time. Okay, the next things I wanted to show you were these two books. And I think if you work with older adults, you should definitely read these, and ideally you'd have them at your desk every day as resources. The first book is called 5-Star Programming and Services for Your 55-Plus Library Customers. And this is a really great overall guide for older adult services. Some of its strengths are it gives tips on web design for seniors, making your website senior-friendly. It also talks about staff interactions with older adults. And finally, how to make your library a comfortable environment for seniors. When I started my job at the library, I did a survey of our older adult customers. And they had several comments about the environment of our library that I tried to act upon. One problem with our library is we have a room called the Wyoming room, which is kind of a genealogy center. And as you all know, often older adults are the people using your genealogy resources. And we had these big, cushy leather chairs in there. And they complained, we can't get out of those chairs once we sit down. So what we did, which made all of our patrons happier, we traded those comfy chairs with some better chairs that had arms on them, some that could be adjusted with the height. And we put the leather chairs in our browsing area. So now everybody's happier. People really enjoy using those chairs in the browsing area, and the genealogists can be comfortable in the chair of their choice. Another thing that we did was I got a grant from Walmart for $500, and we purchased these book baskets. And we always have these available in our library, and I think it makes it easier for a lot of patrons, older adults, and also families with lots of kids around. They put their books in here, they bring them up to the checkout counter, and we barcode them and check out the basket so they can take the basket home and keep all their library things in one place. The Storytime moms really like them, and we can barely keep them in the library during the summer reading program. The other book I wanted to talk about is called Serving... Yeah?
Another addition to that is Dental and Gaylord have carts.
Oh.
And one of the libraries, larger libraries I saw, have their little tiny carts, but the basket fits 2 baskets, one up and one down. And they're $119. I got one for our library, and it's utilized. The larger library that for those that have to push around and use the basket but can't carry it once it's full.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
It takes up very little space, so it's
Yeah,
a good thing to do.
great idea.
Where did you say those were from?
Demco had them, Highsmith had them, Gaylord, I think we got ours from Gaylord, and they range from $114 to $119.
Okay. The next book is called Serving Seniors, a How to Do It Manual for Librarians. And this is kind of like the Bible of older adult programming. It just came out a few months ago, and it's just chock full of ideas, real specific ideas for programs for different seasons or holidays. It lists titles, crafts, songs. It also has several chapters about home delivery of library materials and bringing library items to senior centers and nursing homes. Another great thing about this book is it talks about having a senior services plan for your library. And I don't know about you, but I don't think many libraries have a senior services plan yet, but it's probably something that we should really think about. And just so you know, these books, I believe, are both available from the Wyoming State Library, and I know lots of libraries in the state of Wyoming have them, so you can probably interlibrary loan them from somebody if you can't buy them. The last book I'm going to share with you is called The Sunshine on My Face, a read-aloud book for memory-challenged adults. They call this a two-lap book, and it's designed to be read by an adult who's a caretaker or maybe a child of a person who has a cognitive impairment. And I just want to read you a few pages of it so you can get an idea of it. It talks about a lot of common experiences that most people can relate to even when they've lost some of their memory. I love to feel the sunshine on my face. I love to watch TV under a big cozy blanket. I love to eat warm apple pie and vanilla ice cream. I love to go for a drive in the country. And this is written by Lydia Burdick, and I believe she's coming out with at least one more book like this. Okay, so I know a lot of you may be thinking, well, this is all great, but like you, I don't have very much time or money to do these things. So on page 8, I've listed 5 points on how you can make services to older adults happen in your library. First of all, it's really important to first educate yourself and then educate others about the growing senior population and their special needs. I think everybody should go to the census.gov website and check out the census information about older adults in your area and look at these facts in this packet and other places and present these facts to your library boards, your library directors. Tell them that your library needs hours dedicated to older adults. Tell them why library collections and library programs designed for seniors are important and how they benefit seniors. Another thing to do is to partner with local groups. In Laramie, we were without a video magnifier machine, which is a machine that a patron can put a letter or a photo underneath and it will blow it up on a color screen. And a lot of people were coming in asking for it. We had to say, sorry, ours is broken, we can't fix it, we can't afford a new one. So I wrote a letter to our Lions Club telling them about this, and they bought us a $2,300 color video magnifier, which we now have available to our patrons. Some other groups you could partner with are your local hospital, the AARP chapter in your community, activity directors at senior centers and nursing homes. You can partner with these groups to do things like plan programs, share materials. The third thing to do to make these things happen is to utilize your government resources. In Wyoming, some of the resources we have are our state library for materials and grant opportunities. We have the Wyoming Institute for Disabilities in Laramie, which has a collection of videos and books that are available. They'll send them out to anyone in the state. These items are for people with disabilities and the people who take care of them. We also have the Wyoming Services for the Visually Impaired and Physically Handicapped, and I often call our local representative for information about buying equipment for people with visual problems. And then one resource we can all look to is the National Library Service for the Blind and Physically Handicapped. We may not be able to keep up with some of those people who listen to an audiobook every day from our own collections, so this is a great resource to hook them up with so they can be sent these things through the mail. Fourthly, I encourage you to use volunteers. As I said before, I've had some great volunteer shelvers for my large print collection, but you can use volunteers for lots of things. They can help you do programs, maybe just by providing refreshments. They can deliver library materials, read to seniors, lots of different things. And my final point is to apply for grants. I've only been doing this for 2 years, but I've had a lot of luck getting grants. You can get grants to send yourself to a conference or take a class, to buy large print or other materials, to buy equipment for the visually impaired, lots of things. And I really think that the time you invest in exploring grant opportunities and writing your applications will pay off in the long run. We're kind of running out of time, but I'm going to really briefly talk about something. The lady in the back mentioned that in North Dakota they have some of these bifocal kits available to interlibrary loan. I went to the ALA conference this summer, and a talk I went to inspired me to try to pursue something. I thought in Wyoming we don't really have any programming resources similar to what you have. And I thought, wouldn't it be great if we had bifocal kits and if we had some book discussion kits that would each include copies of a popular title in several formats, large print, regular print, audio books, and maybe throw in some book discussion questions in these kits. And we could use these programming resources statewide and maybe even interlibrary loan them to other states. So I've talked to some people at the state library about this, and they kind of helped me realize how big of a project this would be to implement. But I just wanted to ask you guys what you thought about this and if you had any suggestions or advice. And we only have a few minutes left, so I can only take a few comments. But at the back, there was a pile of colored surveys. And if you could each get one of those and fill it out for me, that would be great, because I have some questions about this where you could provide comments for me. And also I ask about older adult services at your library, because there just isn't a lot of information about this out there, and I'd like to know what you guys are doing at your libraries.
I'm doing the pop book discussions with some of the nursing homes and retired centers. I choose a title, have all formats available. I have the visually impaired, for the blind, the audience tape, and then I have a regular audience. I have at least 4 or 5 titles of the book in large print and regular print available. I use the activity person to circulate it. 2 weeks later, we come back, we have the questions, and they love it.
Great.
If you do this with volunteers, you set it up.
Yeah.
And right now I'm doing it at 4 sites. I've got 12 book discussions. But it's pop fiction that I'm using, not what would have been your main book discussion type book.
Okay.
Popular, like some of the bestsellers. We even did a Daniel Steele called Granny, because it included intergenerational.
Yes.
This kind of doesn't have anything to do with necessarily large print books. North Platte Library never had a foundation for it, and we established one about 3 years ago. One of the first things we done, we went to a workshop, we found out, and it was about writing wills and estates and stuff like that. We found out there were 25 people in our county alone that had over $1 million, did not know what to do with that money after they were gone.
Yeah.
They said you could nickel and dime yourself to death to fundraising, to build a new library.
Yeah.
So the foundation board was established to hopefully get enough money to do that. One of the first things we've done, and I really strongly recommend any library to do it, if you don't have a foundation, get one. We put together a pamphlet. We had an attorney help us, and it goes through and talks to senior citizens about what to do with your money when you're gone, and how a library would be a good place to do it. And it shows how they go about doing it, methods of doing it. And it took us about 1.5 years to get the pamphlet fine-tuned. Then we had a volunteer, a senior citizen volunteer. She went to 23 different places in North Platte, put piles of those pamphlets out. 2 weeks ago, we were putting somebody's estate, she passed away.
That's
So
great.
It paid for itself with that first one.
Yeah.
It is a very good idea. The local museum now is using our copies of our pamphlets to put one together. But there are people out there looking for places to put their money. So
That's right.
good thing to do.
I received a $26,000 donation for large print biographies a year ago, and we asked the donors if we could broaden the scope of that a little bit, but that's allowed me to have a really nice nonfiction collection in large print. Okay, we just have a few more minutes left, so I'm going to go on. On page 10, there's a few more other resources for you. One I want to mention is a local newspaper that we have in Wyoming called Wyoming Seniors Marketplace. This is a monthly paper that comes out full of information for seniors about events, activities. There's advertising in there from businesses who provide services to seniors. There should be a pile of those on the back table if anybody wants one of those. It's a great way to connect seniors in your community with events and the services they need, and a way for you to advertise your services to them. At the end of your packet, there's several colored sheets. The orange sheet is a newsletter that I write every month, mainly for my homebound patrons, but I also have copies of it available at the library for all of our patrons. I created this large print newsletter because my patrons were saying, I'd like to know what you have that's new, but I can't go in and see it. So it always includes a bibliography of our new titles, and I also have my contact information, and I write the date of my next visit on the newsletter. I also usually include some little articles or book reviews, poems, something fun to read. Then there are 2 articles that are on yellow paper, and these are both about communicating with older adults. The first is called Serving Seniors, Do's and Don'ts at the Desk. And this was an article in American Libraries in December 2003. The next thing is a pamphlet from King County Library System in Washington State. It's tips for staff members on serving people with disabilities. And then finally, there's 2 blue handouts. One I got from the ALA's website, and one I got from the Wyoming Outrider. And they both give you tips on having a comfortable environment for seniors in your library and some just general customer service tips for seniors. Okay, we have a couple minutes for questions, and I have all of the materials up here, so feel free to look at them, get some extra handouts if you need them. And I'll stay here as long as you want to ask questions, but please feel free to get up and go if you need to go somewhere. Yes?
On our large print shelving, it's just like the rest of the shelf in the library. Do you all, I think we're trying to whittle down our collection so that we can take the books off of the top and the bottom. What do you all do for those?
I would love to not have books on the top and bottom shelves, but I don't have room for it. So right now I've got a full range of large print, but I think it's great if you have the space to not have those books low and high. Often if I see an older adult over looking at the large print who appears to be having any trouble, I go over and offer to help them. Any other questions?
Do you have your large print fiction and nonfiction shelved separately from your other collection?
We do have them shelved separately. Any other questions? Okay, thank you for coming. Thanks.